What is up, everybody? Gingerrunner Live, episode number 107 is about to begin. Happy Monday. Welcome back to the show. If you are watching live for the first time, welcome for the first time. We've got a great community of viewers that tune in from around the globe to watch these live episodes. And tonight, my guest is someone I've been a fan of and a follower of for years. And I can't believe it's taken me this long to get him on the show. He's a fantastic writer, ultra runner, mountain biker, skimo racer. We're going to talk a bit about all of it tonight, and hopefully get some stories, because I feel like this guy has tons of stories as well. I'm joined by Joe Grant, aka Alpine Works, which is his Twitter handle and his website and stuff like that. So sit back, relax, get ready, everybody. Gingerrunner Live is about to begin. Gingerrunner. Yes, welcome, everybody. I get so excited for Monday nights because I get to meet people, viewers. First of all, if you are in the chat room, welcome. If you are not in the chat room, but maybe just tuning in some other web browser or anything like that, come join the chat room. Go to the YouTube side, and there's a wonderful chat room there of really incredible people, community that comes back every single Monday, and they have great questions. If you do have questions, type them in there. Kim is in the chat room as well, and she'll be relaying your questions for tonight's guest. As I mentioned just before the show started, tonight's guest I've just been a fan of for a long time. First and foremost with his writing, he's an incredible writer. I first started reading his early blog posts. There was a story I'm going to hopefully find out more about tonight, where he ran around the Wonderland Trail, Mount Rainier, which some of you might be familiar with, the Wonderland FKT film that I released last year. Same trail, years earlier, ran it and had some pretty interesting stories from that. So we'll talk a bit about that tonight. But also just an incredible athlete, and someone really fun to follow, and a fantastic photographer too. I don't want to forget that, because his Instagram is incredible. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Mr. Joe Grant. What's up, Joe? How are you?
Yay. I'm doing great, thanks. Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. Excited to be on the show. Quite the production here. It's cool, man.
Yeah, man. Where are you coming to us from? Because it's a very nice looking kitchen.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm in Gold Hill, Colorado, which is about 10 miles west of Boulder. We're a little bit higher than Boulder, about 8,400 feet. Yeah, my wife and I live here with our dog. We live in a small cabin, 700 square feet. Yeah, we love it. It's kind of snowing right now too.
Oh man, yeah. Just everything you're saying so far is like, I want it. I want it. A small cabin in the woods with snow. Yes, please. And before we even get into the interview with Joe, Joe, I know that you enjoy an adult beverage from time to time. What are you partaking in tonight?
Tonight, I'm representing the local guys here, Oscar Blues. I have the Deviant's Dale, which is a Imperial IPA. So Dale's Pale Ale is Oscar Blues' sort of flagship beer people are most familiar with, and I quite like their IPA. And then their Imperial IPA, which I'm having tonight, which is really good.
I am joining you on the IPA bandwagon. Met the crew and the creators, two wonderful women from San Francisco that created Sufferfest Brews, which is a Bay Area stuff. It's delicious. Highly encourage you guys watching to try it if you get a chance, if it's in your area. So Joe, I'm super excited to have you on the show. I want to start talking about that Wonderland experience, which I know was years ago. I think that might give us some kind of insight into your beginnings as trail runner and running in general. For those maybe who are unfamiliar with the experience, what led you to that Wonderland trail experience? Kind of what got you started in trail running, and then we'll kind of talk a bit about that day, because I feel like it's a pretty fun story.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think if I remember correctly, I think it was 2010 or 2011, maybe 2011. I think it's 2011 actually. And I was coming back from UTMB, and in 2010 the race was canceled due to weather reasons. And in 2011, at the same spot that the race was canceled, so 20 miles into the event, I actually rolled my ankle really bad coming down the first descent of the race, and so had to drop out. Like it was a really bad roll, and I just couldn't go on. And you know, the UTMB is a great event, but it's definitely pretty intense. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of crowds. There's the whole you know, scene, which can be super exciting and fun, and also a bit overwhelming. And so I think I came back with both. I don't know, being overwhelmed from that, just the extent of sort of the madness, and then also with this ankle injury, and just kind of wanted to, I think, just kind of get away and go, you know, sort of go into the woods, so to speak, and do my own thing. So I think it was about 3 weeks or so later, my ankle had healed, and I decided to run around the Wonderland Trail. I was living in Portland, Oregon at the time, so not too far from home. And the trail is just, I think, just really inspiring. I mean, it's 96 miles around the base of Mount Rainier, perfect loop. You know, park the car at the start, run around the mountain, and drive home. So it just felt very much like an organic adventure that I was excited to do.
Self-supported, right? I mean, at that point, you had no crewing or supporting. It was like, this is Joe just wanting to get out there and do his own thing.
Totally. Yeah, that was kind of the idea, and maybe even a little bit beyond that was I went in, you know, just with kind of a water bottle, you know, a bunch of gels, and then and a windbreaker, and you know, and kind of just wanted to do it in that style for the experience. Really, I knew that I would bonk, and I knew that it was cutting it pretty close and all that, but it was really motivated by this desire to kind of simplify everything and just feel you know, what it's like to run. And I feel like the Wonderland Trail, relatively speaking, is quite a safe, you know, it's a safe trail. It's well marked, it's easy to find, like it's not, there's a lot of people on the trail, so it wasn't like this great sort of wilderness adventure, so to speak, but I felt like the parameters were good enough to keep me on my toes, and certainly what happened during the run did. So yeah, I can dive into that a little bit more if you want.
Yeah, what I think is really kind of cool and key about this, you just mentioned it, is the light and fast sort of aspect. I guess before we kind of get towards the last, I guess, 15 miles or 20 miles or whatever it was from Wonderland, that philosophy of light and fast. We've had your buddy Anton on the show before, Anton Kaprichka, and he's also in that same sort of realm of light and fast. Is that something that you really embraced or are continuing to embrace? Is it something that's evolved for you? Are you less inclined to do the light and fast, or is it something that you're just still very passionate about?
Yeah, I mean, I came to running sort of as a simplification of backpacking and climbing, really. So I was doing a lot of quite, you know, light backpacking, but still required a lot of gear and or, you know, some gear, and then climbing obviously requiring a lot of gear as well. And running just really appealed to me in that kind of stripped down version of those activities. For me, it was less about it was more about the environment and exploring places, and less about, you know, oh, if I'm climbing or running or whatever. But running just appealed to me because it was just so simple. You know, you had a pair of running shoes, water bottle, little food, and you could go and do, you know, what would take maybe 2-3 days backpacking, you know, in a morning or a day, you know. And so that it wasn't just sort of like to do more and more and more, but it was more just the possibilities that being in better shape and kind of, you know, would sort of those doors that it would open up. So that's kind of how I got into it. And then, I guess the philosophy has always been centered around that, trying to do things as efficiently as possible. And always, Steve House had this quote of kind of trying to meet the challenge of the mountain, you know? And so less trying to dumb things down to, oh, well, I could go up there in a helicopter. I could, you know, do, you can get to the summit in any kind of way, but sort of the style in which you get there is important. And really, we're just kind of playing this game, right, of setting these arbitrary kind of parameters as like, oh, you know, let's go around the mountain this way. And so for me, it was just based on acquiring more skill, acquiring more, physical fitness and more experience, and then being able to, strip things down to a minimum. So the experience would be, I think, a little more rich.
Yeah. And was this particular experience around Wonderland one of the first times that you've done something this big, or before then had you experimented with adventures light and fast, grabbing a couple gels and a water bottle and going on a 96-mile journey?
Yeah, I mean, in this specific context, yeah, I mean, definitely in the running context, it was probably one of the bigger undertakings I had done at the time, and certainly in that style. But it's a bit like stepping stones, so maybe 5-10 years or prior, if I had a light pack and a lot more food, it still felt very much on edge for me, and so
Yeah.
I don't know if there was really like it was just what was right for me at the time, and I felt like I could manage in terms of experience and skill, and less as to what I brought was less defining, and it was more just about the kind of the headspace that I was in, So cool. I'd say previous to that, I was definitely in places where I felt very challenged and felt like I'd gone really light and just had enough gear for the situation. When compared to the Wonderland, it would have been a lot of stuff, But yeah. From an experience standpoint, I don't know if it was that different. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. Let's start talking about it, because a lot of my viewers are probably familiar with just Wonderland in general terms. They probably not necessarily have been on the trail, but did a video last year where kind of documents some of the trail. Yep. So what was this day like for you? And yeah, take us to the point where things got a bit interesting.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I would say, honestly, I mean, and even to this day, the first, 85 miles, which is a lot of,
that's nuts. Yeah.
Yeah. The first, or 80 miles maybe, were some of the best running I've ever done ever. It was just, everything just kind of worked. I mean, I set the first 10 or 12 hours, I was just eating like 1 gel an hour because I was kind of rationing, but sort of wasn't bonking, and just completely focused and in the groove. And things were just kind of really happening. And then I had some low spots, but they felt very manageable. And there was just this really amazing kind of, you move around the base, so through these different landscapes, and then also through these different times of day, and it was a full moon out. So once I got to the nighttime, it was just absolutely amazing. Like I could see pretty much everything, other than in just like deep in the woods. But when you're on the, on the open parts, you can just really see everything. So yeah, it was a very, I guess, blissful experience, Yeah. And in some ways I was feeling, I was about a little less than probably 15 miles from my car. Closing it off.
Park? Was it Longmire? Did you park at Longmire, or did you do a different route?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, okay. Just the main Rainier entrance is, I guess there's many, but I was just coming from the south, and I can't. Yeah,
probably would have been Longmire. Yeah,
Longmire sounds right. It's been a while, but yeah. And it was about 15 miles from my car, and having really this feeling of, man, I'm just on top of the world, I got this. Like I'm bringing it in. It's 15 miles to go, just no problem, and feeling not arrogant or anything, but just like, God, it's easy sometimes, and it was really clicking. And then I came around this bend and came about 10 feet away from a mountain lion. And this, I kind of stop and look at the cat, and my initial reaction is like, wow, like that's really cool, Mm-hmm. And then the sort of thoughts of like, oh yeah, that's a mountain lion, and it's a dangerous animal, and all the sort of, knowledge that you have of the animal sort of creeps in, and then you're like, okay. So I was in this position where I could move around the cat without, having to go by it exactly. And as I continue along the trail, it starts to follow me. And so then we go through this back and forth for about an hour and a half of basically the cat being about, I don't know, 30 to 50 feet or so behind me, just not aggressive, not really, just following me, and I was making a lot of noise, and I'd come out in these little clearings in the moonlight, and so I could see it very clearly. And I was kind of walking backwards, and then I turn. I didn't really want to run because, you're just, and so I'm like tapping the ground with sticks and trying to make all this noise. And it was just kind of unfazed. And I'm, 80 miles deep and pretty depleted. And so then things kind of start to hit you, you feel extremely vulnerable. You start to kind of bonk, and you kind of want to break from the situation to sort of, drink some water or something. And like, okay, let's resume the chase here. But that obviously didn't happen. And so finally I got to this road, which leads to Mirror Lake. So if that gives any, bearings on where I was exactly, the trail kind of crosses this road to Mirror Lake. Yep. And I decided, so there I'm looking at my map, and I like, man, I got like, I think 5 miles or something to the car. It was not long, not far.
Very short. It's all downhill. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just like, I'm just so close, but this mountain line's still there. And so I decide to stay on the road, and I'm kind of just banging these sticks on the road, walking backwards. And eventually I get to this Jeep, and I knock on the window, and this woman is sleeping in her car, and she's waiting to photograph Mirror Lake at sunrise. So, and she kind of miraculously just like lets me in, like this kind of weird guy, knocking on her window at like 2 o'clock in the morning or something. And she's all excited about it. She was like, oh, wait, let's try and see. And so we're flashing the light out. And of course, like, that with all the commotion of the car and everything, can't see the cat anymore. She gave me beer and chips, and I hung out and chat with her in the car for a little bit. She let me sleep until sunrise in the car, and then she got up and took some pictures, and I was done. I was completely done. Like I didn't get out and run the last 5 miles, to walk the last 5 miles. Like she dropped me back at my car, and I just went home, like tail between my legs. Like I was terrified. I mean, it was just, and in retrospect, you kind of go through all these scenarios of like how you could have dealt with it differently or whatever. Sure. But in the moment, it's intense. And I was definitely, it all kind of hit me when I got into the car. Like my legs started to hurt. I was really tired, and I'm like, man, I just don't want any part of this anymore. So.
I mean, this is crazy, because not only is it its own 96-mile adventure, essentially 100 miles with it's close to 25,000 feet of gain. I think it's gnarly technical stuff too. And to think that you have those miles left, but then like 5 miles left, but then there's a mountain lion out there. I can't even fathom doing what you did on like handfuls of gels, essentially a single bottle of water. Do you have have you gone back, or do you have any desire to go back and just wrap up that loop and get it done with? Or did you ever do that?
Yeah, no, I definitely, it never really worked out, like schedule wise. And just, I think it's an exceptional trail. I think I'd love to climb the mountain too. I think Rainier's a really wonderful place. And I have no apprehension, with the, maybe for a couple months after you're a little more, touchy at night, like you're running with the like everything sort of, but then after that, after a while, that kind of wears off, and it's not really an issue anymore. So yeah, I'd love to go back. I think it's an amazing place. And I would like to kind of, I think it lends itself pretty well to doing a self-supported run, just because it's long enough, but yeah, it's just in that window where you can kind of, I think, carry enough food, and even do it with a little, quite a bit more than what I carried, but and still do it pretty light, especially if you get a good weather window in the middle of summer or something. It's quite pleasant out there.
Yeah, it's an incredible trail. My wife and I have talked about going back this year for sure. It's incredibly beautiful. So for you, since then, I think you said 2011. I think that's right, based off of just following you for a number of years.
Yeah.
How do you feel you have evolved as an athlete? Because this is something I've been wanting to talk about with you for a while. you're an ultra runner. You have a pretty damn impressive resume of ultra runs, wins, podium finishes. And in the last couple of years, I feel like you've been still focusing on ultra running, but also mountain biking and now skimo. So how do you think the last few years you've evolved? Are you looking to pursue other rock climbing too? Have you evolved as an athlete? Are your interests in other areas? Are you balancing by doing these other sports? Kind of how have you evolved?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, like I said, I came to running, sort of from climbing and backpacking. So in some ways that's a little bit sort of full circle, where I put that aside and really focused on running for a good period of time, particularly when I was living in Portland. Like, it was just, I was working at the Portland Running Company for a little bit, and there was very much a focus on just running. And I like that it really helps you improve, to focus on something specifically, but it also takes away a little bit from, the diversity of experiences that you can have. And for me, like I said in the beginning, it's always been more about, the adventures and the environment and kind of what the landscapes to explore. And so picking the right tool to do those, adventures, and say, for example, having, building back up my rock climbing skills is a good example. It's like, oh, cool. Like I can go up this peak, and I can go up a maybe a more interesting line, because my ability is better, and again, for me, I'm not like, undermining the a trail that would go up to the summit of the peak or something, but it just offers different possibilities, in terms of what you can do. And ironically, I ran my first ultra, so that was in 2007, at Where's Waldo 100K.
Yeah.
And
first ultra?
Yeah, it was my first race, actually. I'd never really ran a race, and
what a monster of a first one.
Yeah, but it was kind of a funny story, because I was well, I can give you the sort of longest, shortest version. Yeah, I was in India for a little while. My wife was working for the Tibetan Women's Organization in Dharamsala in northern India, and so I went and kind of did a little volunteer work, and then traveled to Nepal, and we spent about 4 months out there. And on my way back, I had a flight from Delhi to Paris, and then Paris, Philly to Eugene. We were living in Eugene at the time. And I decided to get off in Philadelphia and miss my connection and buy a bicycle and ride it back to Eugene. I had this sort of window of time, and so I got off with my carry-on luggage and got the bus to downtown Philly, and bought this cross bike, loaded up, didn't know what I was doing at all, and just went west. On the first day, I mean, like, broke my chain, I broke a spoke, I got, incredible like saddle sores the first week. I mean, it was a big learning experience. It was a phenomenal experience. I wasn't doing it for time or anything. It was more just like, I visited my grandparents in Indiana on the way. Like, it was very much of just kind of a trip. And after that, I got to Oregon, and I was in great shape. I just ridden 4,200 miles, and was in great shape, and wanted to kind of explore this new place that we had moved to. And so I started looking into these different trail runs, and found the Where's Waldo 100K, wrote Craig Thornley, and at the time you could kind of petition your way in if you hadn't run an ultra before. Like, there was this, you had to have run a 50K, but I said, well, I have this other background and experience, and I think I could probably do the race, and so he let me do it. And I grew up in France, so so I came to Waldo with like poles and a camelback, and I was very Euro about the whole thing. I evolved. The next year I had handhelds and everything, but that first year I was with my golf cap and like my poles and camelback, and out for a 100K trek kind of thing. So that was that initial sort of experience into ultra running, which kind of came from cycling, right? Or at least that base was sort of there. And so again, it was just more about, this seems like a cool community of people, and a good way to go explore the mountains. And it's like this set context, right, where you can go and do it relatively safe, and there's aid stations and there's an after party and you camp out beforehand, and it's great, right? So I just kind of clicked with the whole scene and the people, and got into it that way. So in terms of my, evolution, I would say that it's more just, I guess you get full into running for a while, and then I came back more full circle and maybe got more confident just in, in who you are as a person and what you kind of want to do, right? And not just think, okay, I have to kind of continuously do exactly these races. Like I have to do like the world tour and things. And those things are great. Like I love doing the races, and I feel very privileged to be able to participate in a lot of them, right? But at the same time, I also like that freedom of thinking up some sort of adventure and going for it. And the bike's a great tool for it, and skiing's a great tool for it. In winter, it's just a very efficient way to move in the mountains. And so for me, it's less about a trend, so to speak, and more about, I managed to kind of acquire the gear over the last 3 or so years, and it kind of just fits into what I'd previously been doing, but just a little bit better in terms of equipment and then technique and this and that and the other. So yeah,
that's awesome. Awesome to hear that, and to just kind of like pick up and ride across the country. That's pretty badass. I had no idea that you essentially just like grabbed a bike and was like, let's go west across the country. I can imagine hitting the Rockies for the first time was a bit daunting, but
strange. Well, the funny thing is once you hit the Rockies, you're like, 2,000 miles in. So you kind of worked out a lot of kinks. You're in pretty good shape at that point, and you're just like you're riding the bicycle and you know how to do it. And it wasn't like the riding a bike was foreign. It was more just this multi-day stuff and carrying your camping gear and, just figuring out all the little pieces of, bike maintenance on the road. And those I think were more of the learning curve. But by the time you get to the Rockies, at least for me, I was like pretty calloused and feeling, good about, and funnily enough, like from there on, it didn't rain anymore until Oregon. So I kind of went to Cali and then went up the coast and so on the last day it poured down. But the first 2,000 miles to the Rockies, it nearly rained every day. Like it was in April. So it was just horrendous, like headwinds, rain, like Kansas, just 500 miles, straight line, headwinds, riding like 8 miles per hour, just awful. But once you hit the Rockies, it's kind of, Nevada and everything, and you just get into some just amazing country. So that's a big kind of mental boost too.
That's pretty awesome. We got some great questions coming in from the chat room. I didn't forget about you guys. I've been reading and watching during the whole live show here. If you guys continue to have questions for Joe, ask him in the chat room. Kim's going to be taking off here in just a second, but I'll make sure to relay them. We got some good ones going so far. And Joe, just so you know, Kimosabe in the chat room is saying that you are the renaissance of outdoorsmen. And I couldn't agree more. You define just that ability to do a bit of everything. It's pretty cool. We got good questions here for you, Joe. Specifically about growing up and living and training, and you've even competed in Europe a number of times. This question comes from Mieke Spitales, which I'm guaranteeing you I mispronounced. Joe spent a lot of time in France, and if I'm not mistaken, around Chamonix. So the question is, Alps or Rockies, and what does he like or dislike about both areas?
Well, it's I grew up on the west coast of France, so I spent 18 years of my life in Nantes, which is a coastal town, so about 13 hours away from Chamonix. But I have been going to Chamonix the past 6 years for mainly around UTMB and Tour de Géant and different races, but spent number of weeks and I guess months now out in the area. I'd say, it's just a very different, like the Alps are very compact. The access is amazing. Everything's very developed. But at the same time, once you get up high in the mountains, it's just really, really pristine, amazing climbing and running. And it's very close, so you can be, you can go over to Italy through the Mont Blanc tunnel in 20 minutes, you know, and it's just, you've got the whole massif there. And it just, the amount of possibilities within that sort of concentrated area are just phenomenal. The Rockies are it's a lot more vast. It's just kind of piles of rocks, you know. We're a bit more, it's less technical, and just big open spaces. It's not Alaska. Like, people from Alaska will say, oh man, Colorado's super crowded. And I feel that way about the Alps, but it's still, you know, really, really good too, you know? So I don't know. I wouldn't really want to have you know, a better or worse kind of place. I just think that they both offer just amazing opportunities to explore. And to me, it feels a little more wild in Colorado, you know, when you're up on some of the ridges and you just got, you know, vast expanses of land with not a whole lot of, you know, homes and you know, established trails and stuff. Whereas the Alps, you've just got, you know, chairlifts and a lot more towns everywhere. So it's just a much more kind of developed area. But in terms of racing, for instance, people get really into it. You know, they love the mountain running culture. They love to come out and cheer. And so it can be 2 a.m. and you're going over a mountain pass and you'll have, you know, 30 people standing there, you know, cheering you on. And it's very different. But at the same time, I can appreciate something like Hard Rock, where, you know, you have one person, you know, on the pass and at 2 a.m., you know, and it's just a very different experience. But I think both are equally interesting.
We got some questions here from Dylan. I want to make sure that we ask these as well. Joe, have you ever had a huge injury or been laid off an extended period of time? If so, how did that affect your psyche, your training, and how were you able to bounce back? That's question number one. So we'll deal with that one first.
Running related. I mean, I've broken both my ankles and things like that, but not related to running. And I've had a variety of, you know, injuries in just more acute trauma, you know, kind of stuff. I did have a pretty severe overuse injury in kind of my anterior tib, sort of like big toe tendon. It was this weird thing that just when I flexed my toe, it just really hurt my in my arch area, and it wasn't plantar. It was just kind of this weird lingering tightness that I had. And yeah, that was pretty debilitating for a while. And I think it was a lot linked to weak ankles, partly from the previous breaks, and then just rolling them a lot. And so part of it was footwear. I mean, you know, a reason I run in sort of more minimal shoes is because you're closer to the ground, and that kind of minimizes that you know, roll. So it's not always the most comfortable go over long distances, but I also feel more secure and safe, like from the ankles perspective. So my feet can kind of hurt, but then they're not, you know, gonna get my ankles aren't gonna get damaged. So I guess there was part of that was part of running in more minimal shoes was to address some of those ankle issues. So that was on the, I guess, the technical front in terms of dealing with the injury. Yeah. And then mentally, I don't know, I'm just a pretty positive person, and so I'll just kind of pour my energy into something else. You know, if I can't run, I can walk out my door and go look at the mountains and, you know, write about it or photograph it, or, you know, do whatever else that is stimulating in different ways, you know. So I tried to kind of take that opportunity, I guess, as a timeout, so to speak, and not, I think initially the first couple of days, it could be really hard. And then especially if like the weather's really good, you know, and you're just really excited to get out. But I think if you focus too much on your inability to do something, you know, it's gonna eat away at you. So trying to just channel my energy into other things is really helpful in dealing with injuries. But for the most part, I've been fairly lucky, like not a ton of overuse stuff, and then just more acute things, you know, that come pretty quickly and then go away pretty fast.
Yeah. And Dylan's second question, which I'm actually going to kind of piggyback on as well with an additional question. Second question, do you ever feel scared now that you're running on trails in the night, being that you ran into a cougar? If so, how do you cope with it? And I'll dovetail with that do you find yourself wanting to go out on longer adventures that have night experiences with them? And do you train more now alone? Or do you find the enjoyment out of training with other people, partners, or groups?
I think for the first couple months, like I mentioned, that was definitely a concern. I would the first few night runs I did right after that was a little bit more nervous, and just kind of like I'd hear rustle in the bushes, like that's but that's definitely worn off. And if anything, I feel like I've just changed my perspective to just being more accepting of there's not a whole lot you can do. Yeah. I mean, basically, if you're running and a cougar wants to get you, it's going to get you. The chance of that happening is really, really, really small. Pretty, I mean, it could, but it's just not. So I think I never run with music. I like to be, as aware as I can of my surroundings. Yeah, I guess I just kind of embrace the fact that I can't control all those parameters, and relax. And honestly, I just don't really think about it. Like it's not really part of my. I mean, I'm aware of, of the animals, and I'm more scared of moose, to be honest, just because they're very territorial, and I run a lot of very tight trails with like tight bends, and you're in the forest and with my dog, and I'm more worried about coming around a tight bend and encountering a moose and it charging either me or my dog, and that's probably the most I guess dangerous animal around where I live. I've seen cougars around here, but it's just never really been an issue at all. Same with bears. I
wanted to talk more a bit about the Colorado Trail race that you did last fall on. What I was really surprised to hear is a hardtail, and I mean a total rigid frame, right?
Rigid bike, yeah.
Yeah, completely, which it blows my mind. So I would love to hear a little bit more about what made you decide to sign up for the Colorado Trail race, which is a mountain biking race along the Colorado Trail, and kind of how that experience went for you.
Yeah, so initially I started talking with the folks at actually at Oscar Blues, and they have a bike. They build handmade bicycles called Reed. So beer the other way around.
I love it.
And my initial connection with that was with Hot Box Roasters, that's their coffee. They make coffee as well, roast coffee. So Hot Box Roasters roast coffee. Derek, who heads up Hot Box Roasters, is a bit of a trail runner, and contacted Tony and I to kind of help him with some of the promotion initially with coffee. And so we, got involved with that, and because we love coffee, and then we like beer as well, and so it kind of it's a good fit, and really hit it off with the guys there, and then started talking about doing these bike to summit, bike to run kind of adventures. It's just like, man, the bike opens up so much opportunity, because you could ride 100, 200 miles or whatever to get into a place, and then run up and down a peak, and then ride back. And so this kind of the whole self-propelled ethic was very appealing to us. So one thing led to the next, and we got some bikes from Reed, and my project was to ride and run the Colorado 14ers. And so that's actually something in terms of like future projects is I'm planning on doing that this summer in August. So calling the Tour de 14ers. It's inspired by this guy, Justin Simoni, who did it last summer, all self-powered, biked and climbed all of the peaks under his own power. Awesome. And so, from my house, it's this just I leave from my house on the bike and ride roughly 1,500 miles, and it's about 400 miles of running, and just kind of go out and try and basically tour the state. So the Sam's Pants, which was the bicycle that Reed got me built, was really designed with that in mind, you know.
Okay.
And so it was kind of like, okay, we'll get the bike going, and then we'll where I live, there's a lot of dirt roads, and so it's kind of a gravel grinder sort of monster cross is what they call it, you know. So more suited for gravel roads and that kind of thing. But then I got the bike, and I was considering doing the Colorado Trail for a couple years, and just felt like it was sort of coming together. You know, I had the machine, even if it wasn't the exact right one for the Colorado Trail race. I just thought it was a great opportunity to sort of, you know, test the waters a little bit in this bike packing world. And it's pretty low commitment for me. It's, you know, you drive down to Durango, and then and a bike back to Denver, you know. And so I was quite not unattached to the result. Like, I wanted to finish and you know, complete the trail, but I was definitely not in a race mode. You know, it was more just kind of a discovery of kind of what this is all about. And so then you draw from a lot of pieces, such as fast packing and ultra running, and you kind of take all those little bits. It's like, okay, well, you know, I'm going to bivvy out, and I'm being a sleeping bag and a bivvy sack, and then you need food, and you need, you know, some wore clothes, and that's about it, really, you know. And then you just pedal the bike, you know. And so the simplicity of it really kind of attracted me to it. And so it wasn't you know, doing it on a rigid bike wasn't like to prove a point or anything. It was more just like, this is the bike I've got, and it's a bike, it will work, you know. And it did, and it worked amazingly well, actually. I was kind of blown away. I would always get down these technical descents, and, you know, I'd be so banged up because it's just like, you know, you know, coming down the hill.
Yeah.
And then you look at the bike, and, like, the bike's completely untouched, you know, like, just not a ding on it. And so that was really cool, you know, sort of to see. And then the bike packing experience was just rad because it reminded me of the early days of ultra running, you know, of at least when I got into it, you know. Very core community. It's all self-supported, right? So you're not allowed to get any assistance from the outside. It's an honor system, so similar to kind of our FKT sort of setups, where you know, you go out, you've got a little spot tracker, and you're allowed to you know, stay at a hotel, buy food, anything that everybody has access to is a go. But you're not allowed to have anybody meet you on the trail. You're not allowed to have you know, outside assistance in any way. You're also not allowed to assist other riders, so you can't ride in groups, you know. So I just like that kind of do-it-yourself ethic. And then the crowd of people would just seem like my kind of people, you know. It was just like a bunch of, you know, 60 folks, I think, that lined up at the start and just had, you know, not very much gear and just ride to Denver.
So awesome.
And, you know, you're crossing pretty much the, you know, state of Colorado, and it's a phenomenal trail. Down south, you're in the San Juans. It's absolutely breathtaking and quite technical, pretty much all the way to Buena Vista. The riding is pretty challenging. So I was challenged on all fronts for sure.
I can imagine.
Yeah, but had a really good time.
Now you mentioned the Tour de 14ers, which I think that's incredible. So people were in the chat when we're talking, he's going to ride his mountain bike for the Nolan's 14. I'm assuming this is completely different. This is every 14er in Colorado.
That's correct. Yeah, there's 58 14ers in Colorado. Nolan's is 14 14ers in the Saguache range, and so it's you basically do Nolan's. You know, yeah, you do it in a bit of a weird way because, you know, Nolan's is what's great about Nolan's is it's 14ers that are just in this, you know, perfect sort of enchantment, right? You start, I like to start up north and go down south, but, you know, it's you know, start outside of Leadville and go down to outside of Salida. And so it's just 14 peaks all in a row. But in this case, because you got the bike and you're in wilderness areas, you can't ride a lot of the peaks, and it would be kind of detrimental nearly to, have to, even the ones you can ride up. It's like Mount Elbert, for instance, you can ride up Mount Elbert, but you're way better off stashing the bike and, run hiking to the top and then coming back and getting the bike. But because you don't have any outside support, you have to manage your bike. And so you can't link up as, the peaks in the way you would if you were just doing a straight Nolans, right?
Right.
So you end up doing those 14ers, obviously, but not in that sort of straight push like you would for Nolans.
Essentially doing 58 out and backs in some respects, where you ride your
bike. They're kind of organized in little clusters, and so there's you'll basically ride to a little cluster and then do some of the peaks as logical as possible, minimizing the amount of actual running that you need to do, and to recover your bike and then get to the next spot and do the same thing again. So nice. There's like outliers, like Long's Peak or Pike's Peak, which are just kind of by themselves, and then you just kind of do the out and back on those. But then there's others that you can sort of group together a little bit more.
Got it. That's fascinating. What a cool project to be working on for this summer. I'm assuming we'll be able to follow you on social media. Will you be doing updates as you kind of build up, that sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely. The plan is to try and, Colorado's pretty, there's a lot of cell reception, and the plan is to try and, certainly post pics on Instagram and, give maybe a little bit more lengthy updates in that format. And then I'll have a spot tracker and that kind of thing. So yeah, I want it to be a fairly interactive, well, as much as it can be, because you're doing the event and trying to update people at the same time, but I'll try and be as I guess as social as I can be, in the moment.
For sure. Before we get towards the end of the show, I have to talk about the ski mountaineering.
Sure.
You recently competed in, was it your first race or was it your second race officially that you were very, very recently competing in?
The Power 4 that I did with Tony was that was my fifth race.
Okay.
So I'd done a few. I toured the Grand Traverse last year, which is a race from Crested Butte to Aspen, which I'm doing again in a couple weeks actually with Tony. Before that, I'd done a race in Taos, a race in Santa Fe, and then a shorter race in Copper. So I've been dabbling in the skiing for past 3 years. I used to do a lot of snowboarding and things like that too, but the actual ski racing aspect is a little different. There's transitions, there's a lot of technical pieces that aren't that difficult if you're going slow doing them. Sure. It's like putting on skins and transitioning is not that hard, but in the rush of the moment and it just gets quite chaotic. It's kind of and you're hypoxic from the climb and worked, and then you're sort of trying to do everything right, and then you're staring down like this steep descent, and I have to remember how to ski down, and so there's just I guess it's the urgency of it that makes it challenging, unless it didn't blow my mind in a way of like, oh, this is completely something I can't do. It's more just the actual racing part. There's just so many little pieces to it that you're engaged constantly, and to a certain extent, I guess running has that piece, like the first time you do it and somebody blows to an aid station and just grabs a change of water bottle, and you're like, whoa, like you're running 100 miles and you didn't stop at the aid station. That's kind of weird at first, right? But you get used to all these little pieces and kind of dialing in the gear. So it's a fun challenge, and there's a lot to it, which I enjoy.
Will you find yourself going back for more races?
Yeah, totally. I think the races challenge you differently than just kind of getting out and touring. And mainly just because you have to up your game and your technique, and you commit a little bit more, and comparable to running, it's there. And then there's a community aspect to it that's really fun. Just getting together with a bunch of like-minded people and going out and being in the mountains is really fun. And I think that's a component I really enjoy in running, and the skiing is similar that way. So yeah, I could definitely see myself doing more races for sure.
This year, I'm really curious about your plans as far as ultra running, or you said the Grand Traverse is going to be something on your calendar here in a couple of weeks, but
Yep.
is your calendar filling out? Are you the type that's like, oh, let's just kind of see what happens and then jump into races as they happen? I mean, things like Hard Rock and Western, stuff like that, obviously is a different story, but
Yep.
do you have a plan as far as a race calendar this year?
I do. And so part of it's, thinking about the preparation for the 14ers. And so I'm actually going to be doing a bike race called the Arizona Trail Race. So you ride from Mexico to from the Mexican border to the Utah border. So 750 miles across Arizona. And it involves, carrying your bike across the Grand Canyon on your back. And
Wow.
I'm doing that in a similar kind of, vein to the Colorado Trail, in just sort of out of interest mainly, and also just refining the skills, refining my sleep system, refining all of that, which I think will serve me really well for the 14ers project. And so then that will be mid-April, and after that I'll move completely into running then, and I'm going to Japan to do a 50K end of May. Called the Mount Hiei 50K, and it worked out in just a funny way, because I'll be in Hawaii the week before, because my wife's presenting a paper at the university there, and so I'm gonna kind of keep going, over to Japan.
Yeah.
And the Mount Hiei is actually the home of the marathon monks. I don't know if you're familiar with the marathon monks. They're a Buddhist. The Buddhist monks who practice running as part of their spiritual sort of pursuit. So they do this 7 years of training where they run different distances in straw sandals, fasting, and there's all these kind of rules. And they traditionally they would carry a noose and a knife. Like if they couldn't complete the training, they'd have to take their lives. Like it's quite involved. There's some great documentaries out there about this. But I was, a couple of years ago, I was lucky to visit the Mount Hiei, which is where most of the monks are. And this year, and I think it started last year, but they're organizing a 50K trail race there. So it's a bit of a cultural, experience, and kind of unique. So I'll do that, and then come back and then prepare for Hard Rock, which I'm 6th on the wait list. So hopefully that should happen, which I think will be kind of just the perfect setup with that amount of running, preparing for Hard Rock, with the biking kind of before that to
Right.
lead into the 14ers in August, kind of with the biking and the running, combined there. So not a ton of a little bit less racing than in terms of straight running races than I would normally do. But I think part of doing a big project like this is being able to prioritize and say okay, I have to do this, right. And really prepare for it and take the time and, not go to other places around the world beforehand. And just sort of keep my focus on that. And then that also will, same for after the 14ers. I'm not excluding doing some racing in the fall, possibly, some 100 or something like that. But I just kind of have to see how I feel, so a lot of it will just be contingent on, coming out of the 14ers. We'll see.
The Tour de 14ers. I think it's great. You're going to start a trend. People are going to be doing this now every year. It's going to be the Tour de 14ers. I can see it now.
Yeah, I mean, that was Justin's goal, is to inspire. I went to see his talk about it, and I've been thinking about it for a while, and it just kind of that was the extra little boost, and he was just like, I want to inspire people to do this, and I had an amazing experience, and I think you will too. So I was like, yeah, right on.
So the next race for you is the Grand Traverse.
Grand Traverse, yep. Followed shortly by the AZT, and then on to Japan and then Hard Rock. Yep.
Awesome, man. I feel like there's still so many topics that we haven't got a chance to talk with Joe about. If you're watching live, we kind of reached the end of the show. We'll do a quick post show with Joe. So if you have any residual questions, maybe they didn't get asked during the main show, just ask them in the chat room now, just so I have a visual on them. But we'll talk briefly in the post show because there's some other things that I'm still really curious about. This has been a fantastic episode, Joe. I can't thank you enough for telling stories, taking the time out of your night to join us tonight. Before we break for the post show, there's something I like to do with all of my first time guests, and it's a little thing called the Quickie Question Quiz, where I just rapid fire questions at you. They're very easy. You just answer with the first thing that comes to mind. If that's
Okay.
cool, let me know when you're ready, and I'll just rip through them.
All right, let's try it.
I think we answered this one already, but what was your very first race?
Where's Waldo? 100K.
Favorite running movie?
Let's see. Gosh, favorite running movie. That little dance movie with Ricky Gates recently.
I love it. Yes,
great. So loved it.
Trails or road? Obviously.
Trails.
Favorite place to run currently?
Indian Peaks.
A bucket list race?
Oh gosh. I'd like to go back to the Tour. I mean, I've already done it, but the Tour de France, phenomenal.
Yeah, you were out there for over, was it close to like 105 hours or something, right?
Yeah, I tore my quad at Hard Rock 6 weeks before, and it was just a complete mess. But phenomenal event. Like just wow. the Elster Valley, I think is well worth going to. Either go and visit, Fast Pack or explore. It's amazing.
What is a guilty pleasure television show?
New Girl.
Up High, See Forever, or Deep Forest, Sound of Water?
Wait, what was that? Up High?
Up High and See Forever, or Deep Forest, Sound of Water?
Up High.
Favorite pre-race meal?
Japanese, yeah, rice and sushi kind of thing.
Favorite post-race indulgence?
Beer, chocolate.
And finally, what are your current running kicks?
Shoes?
Yep.
I use the Scarpa Neutron and Atom on my two go-tos right now.
Nice. That is it. That is it for the main show, Joe. For those who are watching live and they want to follow Joe, where can they find you, man? Where can they find you on social media and websites and stuff like that? Yeah,
AlpineWorks is my handle pretty much everywhere. Alpine-works.com is my website, and that will link to Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Probably most active on Instagram, and that kind of links into everything else. So.
And are you still accepting clients as a coach?
I am. Yep.
Cool. So if you guys have any questions for Joe, follow him on social media. Thank him, obviously, for being on the show, being a guest tonight. But then shout those questions out to him. And if you are looking for a coach, reach out. This has been an awesome episode of Gingerrunner Live. Again, Joe, thank you so much. We do a real quick post show where we can kind of rapid fire through questions that maybe were asked that I didn't get a chance to do. So if you've got a couple minutes, Joe, stick around. And if you're watching live, also stick around for the post show. We'll do a quick one with Joe Grant. So this is episode number 107 with Joe Grant. Every Monday live at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we do Gingerrunner Live. I'm very excited that you guys were able to join us tonight. Thank you for taking the time out. Make sure you subscribe to this channel so you can see the updates of every video that's posted and all that good stuff. And make sure to follow across social media. If you want to help keep the lights on and the mics hot, go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner and help support everything that we have going on here as well. Films, reviews, live shows, everything like that. That is it for tonight's show. Stick around for the post show if you are watching live, and we'll see you guys next week. Gingerrunner. Sweet. So we're still live, Joe, but this is kind of the more relaxed version of Gingerrunner Live.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm sure super stressful, but yeah, there's still tons of questions that people wanted to ask, and we just didn't get a chance to go to them. One thing I wanted to talk about was photography. When did this kind of become something that your eye is fantastic, your photos are fantastic? Was this something that's always just kind of been a creative outlet for you? Is it something in the last couple of years that's kind of jumped out?
My grandfather gave me a camera when I was pretty young. I think it was about 12. I got a proper 35 millimeter camera, and just basically was sort of, he was a great photographer, and learned a lot from him, mainly just in kind of paying attention to details, and looking at things in a certain way, like learning to look, essentially, is kind of what he taught me. Not a ton on the technical front, just more on the basics of just kind of like composition, and looking at things in a certain way. So it's been a kind of a on and off hobby for a very long time, and something that I just really enjoy doing, and so I'll have periods of time where I'm a little more focused on it, and I'm shooting more, and then last year was more, I guess, consumed with this Instagram 365 project that I did.
Yeah.
Is posting a photo every day to Instagram, and which was a really fun project, and I kind of learned a lot from that, and mainly about just being consistent, and practicing every day, and similar to running, it's just kind of having that. You're not going to shoot great pics every day. But you're going to get kind of volume, and you're going to learn different things along the way, and so those that practice just kind of really helps, I think. Now that I'm not doing that post every day, I still kind of have that reflex to think about, oh yeah, I should try and capture something, and so that's a really good, it's really worthwhile in that sense.
Yeah, it's just been great to follow you on Instagram, because every photo has something that draws you in, and I think that's really fantastic. It's a use of a social outlet. At least for me, anytime I post a photo, it's like, oh yeah, hopefully this outdoor photo gets somebody to go outside today or something. But I look at your photos and go, well, this is art, so that's cool. His photos are incredible. You teased a little bit on Facebook with the photo book that you're going to do. Is this something that people will have access to, or is it kind of a first come first serve, or what's your plan?
So the plan with that is just to do, I've done a little collection of 52 of my favorite shots from last year, and I put it together in a little 5x5 book, and I'm going to print 365 of those books. Nice. And so they'll be numbered 1 through 365 and signed, and that will just be kind of the extent of that project, So I received the first order of 50 of the books are here right now, so I'm just kind of working out the kinks on the back end to be able to actually, I don't have a shop and things online, and so those figuring out like the taxes and shipping and all those little bits and pieces. But it's so it'll be a relatively limited edition print, and I'll also do a few 8x8 individual prints as well that will be numbered and signed, and those will just be kind of the top shots.
Nice. Good question here in the chat room from Jonathan. Joe, do you find wearing minimalist shoes that it becomes more of a mental battle over the longer, more technical distances when you deal with pain and rough hot spots at all?
Don't really deal with hot spots necessarily. I mean, the comfort, my shoes are usually pretty good. It's more just, over time, like, rocks and just like your feet get tired, and so I'm not somebody who just sticks to minimal shoes just at all costs. It's more like I explained earlier with the ankle issues, where I quite sensitive to that, because that will take me out. If I roll my ankle badly enough, I'll be out for a while. So I think being low to the ground, having a very precise shoe that's laterally precise, rubber that's sticky, and then just kind of the appropriate sort of lug based on the terrain is important. So muddy or mountainous stuff is a little bit more aggressive, and then something like Western would be a less aggressive shoe. So
right. Kimosabe wants to know, is that a hibachi grill behind you?
No, that's just a fan actually. It's the oven is here. It's this Italian made oven. We actually got it with part of the house when we bought it. So, but we really like it. It's a nice oven.
Dylan wants to know, rapid fire question. What's one quirky thing that no one knows about you, Joe?
Oh gosh, those are always really challenging.
It's got to be quirky, Joe. It's got to be quirky.
I don't know. I do a little naked dance every morning.
That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Let's see. We got one from here from CTAM. What's up, CTAM? Can you talk about injuries common to minimalist runners? How do you deal with them, and how do they compare to general injuries? Don't know if you can speak to that at all.
Yeah, probably just more overuse, getting into things too soon. I think that with a lower drop, you might have some calf issues, some arch issues, things like that, and then stone bruises, stress fractures, possibly even too. So I think those are kind of a little bit more specific to maybe transitioning down to like super minimal footwear. Mm-hmm. There's so many different kinds of injuries that you deal with them according to what the injury is, and I don't think that's really depends on the footwear. It just depends on the injury.
How often do you and Anton get to go out and train together? Is this a friendship that blossomed years ago? Is it new? Is it do you guys find time to train as often as possible together, or is it just kind of a mutual, we're both in the same area at the same time, let's go for some flat iron work?
Yeah, it's kind of a mix. It really depends on the season, on it's always this sort of thing with where our fitness is at, where our injuries are at, where our the time, the objectives, what you're preparing for. So there's just it's more about making it happen when it does, and then but not sort of forcing it, like, oh, we don't meet on every Tuesday for a run or something like that. It's a little bit more organic. But yeah, we spend a fair amount of time together. Certainly if we're not running, we hang out a lot. I mean, he lives just down the hill from me. So, and I've known Tony since 09, 08, 09. So
long time. And you've lived in a number of places. I was curious about this. France, Oregon, Colorado. Do you have a place that you love? Is it Colorado now? You obviously purchased a home, so I imagine you gotta love it. But is there a place that you're drawn to the most, more than others?
I love where I live. I really love where I live. I think we're very fortunate. My wife is a PhD student at the university, and so she works there. And so it's kind of this very unique combination where there's a big university. She can do her work there, and I have access to the mountains. It's really quiet. It's kind of removed from Boulder, but at the same time close by. So I think this is probably the best living situation we've had. But I love Portland. I love the city. I love the environment there, the Columbia Gorge, Mount Hood, and then further north, we lived in Victoria and Vancouver Island for a while. Love Vancouver Island, and then that whole Vancouver area in general, I think is phenomenal. I think there's just a lot of places I could live that would work well. It's difficult sometimes to find a place that will work well for both me and Deanne, my wife. And I feel like Boulder right now is pretty good for both of us.
That's awesome. Again, Joe, thank you for taking the time out tonight. That's it for the post show. Remind people where they can find you, because I encourage all who are watching live or even the archive version of this to go follow Joe and support. It's going to be fun to follow his adventures this year, especially. So remind people where they can find you.
Yeah, alpine-works.com is my website. And on the website, you'll have links to Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and all of those are usually under the handle at alpineworks. And so, yeah, that's the main social outlets that I'm on.
Awesome. Thank you guys for tuning in live. You know the drill. go to the social networks and shout Joe out, because dude's legit, and it's super awesome to have him on the show tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in live. We'll see you guys next week, next Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific. That is it. That's it. Bye.
Thank you.
You got it, man.